So there's a lot you can do. Read the grant proposal I've written and tell me what's missing. ChatGPT will help you. Stages of a grant. You're designing your grant. This particular module only focuses on designing the grant, not implementing the project. So I don't know, Henry, do we have time? Because the idea is to be able to. Somebody says yes, somebody says no.
So we like the engagement.
Who? You want to
She wants more. No, we can't do it.
Just he's too young to be going to Saudi. Initially, just wanted to the market again.
So examples of organizations that support you. Some examples. Because this is just like a compendium, so we won't go through this. And so what we're expecting is that if you are interested in climate financing, after this you go and you check. You have ChatGPT at your disposal, and you actually start training out or writing out and sending grants. But please keep in mind what we said. The worst thing you can do is ask for a grant and not have the mindset or the structure to take the grant. Apparently Nigeria is known as the country that has the most briefcase NGOs in the world. You know what that means?
Yes.
Yes. You already have a very bad reputation with not having any intention to do something and then just going and asking for the money. So please take notes. So I'm going to run through this. You know why I run through it? Because you people all have ChatGPT. And your ChatGPT is speaking your English for you. But please remember that if you over ChatGPT the matter, when they ask you to present and to be on a Zoom call to talk about what your idea is, you should look like somebody that is a bit related to the person that wrote what you sent to ChatGPT. Because that will not be good. So read your proposals, understand the content. The idea is that ChatGPT is not your brain. It just structures ideas for you, but only your content, please. So you should have all these sections in your. These are all writing in clear, concise language. But ChatGPT can tell you that. I use ChatGPT a lot to do things like case studies. So I tell it, I'm training oil and gas companies. I need to teach them about auditing. Give me an auditing context that I can use to teach them. Or in church, I want to train my teenagers about scriptures. Give me fun ways to do it. So there's lots of things you can do, but please try to own your content. These are technical writing best practices, which I'll also just skim through, because this is really just like basic good technical writing. Most of us in Nigeria, when we went to secondary school, when they were teaching English and technical writing, we were not there. We were not. A lot of us were not there. So thank God that we have things that can help us. Some of the reports I read now that adults have written who say we need to own our content. Even if you don't know English, teach yourself again. Even if ChatGPT can write for you, I'll say it again. Learn how to articulate your idea in a way that makes sense. It's not about accent. It's not about whether you say things in a specific way with a particular accent. It's just about sounding like you understand what you're doing. And then you can take that project or that idea from the beginning to the end. How to effectively pitch your grants to donors. Know what they want, know their interests, be able to tell your story, highlight the impact your project is going to make. Everybody likes things about women now, disadvantaged populations, the youth. Showcase innovation and creativity. Show them how you will report back to them and measure. Highlight any partnerships that you're at any stakeholder engagement. Use people are very visually stimulated. Use charts. And then integrate gender into your project as much as possible. How's your project going to help women? I have personal thoughts about that, but I won't share it. Because I also have a son. So sometimes I wonder about the boys. But gender mainstreaming is something that a lot of investors are looking at now. And these are ways that gender mainstream. So what we wanted to do, which I don't think we'll be able to do properly, is look at, can you see all these examples? Reducing plastic waste in the community, promoting renewable energy solutions, protecting local biodiversity, implementing water conservation practices. Imagine that you had grant funding for $10,000 for each of these projects. How would you come up with ideas? How would you come up with ideas, an idea? Now, what I'd like us to actually do, because we don't have the time now, is maybe take the picture. So I go back to this slide, because you can actually go back and do it yourself. You can choose one, and then when I show you the next slide, you actually go and maybe use ChatGPT, maybe think through it to actually come up with a grant proposal. I'll do to carelessly say you can send it to me to review, but so look at these 4 examples. Then go to the next. When we go to the next slide, you can actually come up with a basic grant proposal. So before the end of the week, you can send out your first proposal. Look for an organization that has the same objectives as those previous 4 bullet points, and just come up with a grant proposal that has these basic subheadings. What we wanted to do was actually have like breakout groups where we will do it amongst ourselves, but I think that will take too long. So challenge yourself and give it a go. Look at it. Somebody's asking you if there's a handout. I know that the learning management system is going to have all of this content and even more. I think you said in a month. Yes. Yeah.
Shout outs.
Please take the picture. Yes. There's a lot more than this. There's a lot more than this. This is just some sources of content. Remember, think about your size, your scale. If you're just a 2-man organization or you're an individual, you need to align with funding sources that give to individuals, because there are sources like that. I can move on a bit. Okay, so the call to action is, I think I've already done a call to action in the beginning. Stay informed, know your area. I always feel that passion is the oil of life. Don't do what you're not interested in. Life is very short. Spend your energy and your time doing what you genuinely have an interest in. And you must be able to find an interest area in this big spectrum of sustainability, climate. That's why you are here. That's why you got up and left your house and came here today. So, engage with people. Just keep to your area of interest, join networks, collaborate. We're very bad at collaboration in Nigeria. Please collaborate. People always feel that if they tell you their idea, you're going to steal the idea away. No, collaborate. 2 are better than 1. 3 is always better than 2. It goes on like that. come together and say, why don't we write a proposal? You have a strength, I have a strength, let's do it together. Is it like people don't agree with this collaboration?
We agree.
No, it's just different.
For instance, it would be nice if rather than just one person going away, people actually discuss and say, okay, what can we do together? I'm interested in gender, you're interested in renewable energy. Let's do a renewable energy for women project. Okay. So we have a few questions that we're going to ask. Apparently we don't.
Simple and sign.
Yeah. So thank you very much. That's the end of that one. You raise his hands for attention.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Yeah, my question is, for example, you have written a proposal like a grant and they've given you, if let's look at Nigeria as a case study, they've given you a grant and you started working on it. And you know, Nigeria with our currency that is not stable. So if you have grant like that and you're already working on it and you discover that our currency keeps going higher, and so how do you go about it? Are you going to go back to the people that are giving you grants for them to add more to it, or so what do you do?
By the way, that's an excellent question. And that question is not only doesn't only apply to private finance projects. Every business in Nigeria that receives foreign funding grapples with this problem you're talking about. It's called just foreign exchange volatility. And that's the reason why we say that when you are writing your grants, you must take risk management into consideration. So forex volatility is a risk. You know, not just a risk in Nigeria, it's a certainty. So you between now and a year's time or the life cycle of your project, you can actually have a simple chart that shows you where the Naira is likely to be in 4 years or 3 years when you complete your project. These things can be done. And you must build that into your project and the project return. As I said, it's not exactly as, because the whole idea about profitability is that the project has to be profitable over the period, given the risk the project will face. Okay, next question.
Yeah, my question is recently, the Development Bank of Nigeria recently became the first bank to receive direct access entry. What does that mean for climate finance in Nigeria?
Very simple. That's a really simple question to answer. I have no idea. You know what, when I did my PhD, you know one thing that I started learning how to say? I don't know.
Yes.
Actually,
You actually don't know, yes.
never heard about that.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to ask the questions from the presentation, even though I stepped up left. And it's on the green ones. I wanted to know the ones that you have mentioned, which sector have they been styled around, and what vehicles or what initiatives have been utilized, for optimization of those. And then also with World Bank, we have a network. Some of the things that we have shared today are actually some of the tactics that we have started to do in our office. And we have curated a 400 number of sustainable businesses within a playground right now. We're beginning to build competences within them and also helping them to be investable. So what sort of vehicle, financial vehicle or instruments would you advise from a World Bank international funding perspective? And also just to say that would World Bank be interested in providing the technical support? Because for some of the things that you have said, we know that we lack the baseline framework for the operationalization of what is considered. And we also know that private sector has a huge role in EESG. And I add E because with our own landscape, the E is economic. Economic is key in terms of our trajectory of development in Nigeria. If you want to get people, like you have said, that people do not understand the idea or the philosophy or the principle of climate change, they can never know, because climate change does not interpret to food on the table.
Exactly.
And that is the baseline of what every average Nigeria, that like we've got like 55% of Nigerians living above below poverty line. So they really do not care if they go and defecate somewhere and they need to get their next place of food. It makes no difference to them. So how can we get that behavioral attitude to tell? It's by incentivization. If we're going to incentivize, then there needs to be a capital inflow into the market. Who is going to push that injection? It is from the private sector. How can we get the private sector to be in that space? It is through the EESG framework. They have obligatory contributions as producers and manufacturers under the extended producers' responsibility to effect their environmental. No, but so what I'm asking is, we need World Bank. Do you understand? This is where we need the support. This is where we need the technical expertise. We need the eggheads, and we need the young ones also, who are going to be the innovators, who are going to be the technology solutions, so that we're able to optimize the market. So this is my pitch to you. I'm still going to come back to you.
I think you should come back. But to answer the first question, well, pretty much all the green bonds that have been raised in Nigeria have been focused on reforestation. They try to plug into the NDCs, Nigeria, the National Determined Contribution. So they've been focused on reforestation, like smart agriculture, and some renewable, some green energy. And even the new bond that's about to come out is focused on that as well. Yes. And then there's a second question you asked. The thing about the World Bank is that the World Bank is also a bank. But remember the bank part of it. So they will focus on projects that are also bankable and will not invest in a project that is not bankable.
So what would you advise to our?
But then they don't have this whole big set of climate funds that does not have quite as much of the profits return expectations that your typical funds have. There are also grants as well that help to do things like build institutional capacities. And the World Bank actually gets it basically just gathered grants from other institutions in Europe that focuses on things like, okay, we can see that to be able to build this sector, we need to train, we need to build institutional capacities. It's just like you need to match the grants to the needs. For all the grants, I work on the grants as well, and I help to, for instance, build capacities in certain sectors. But everything is all very specific. If $1 million comes, it's coming for a specific reason to build capacities in a particular area. So it's really about finding the right people to speak with. To be able to just answer the
good afternoon.
Can we just take like 1, 2, 3 more questions?
Good afternoon. My name is Idowu Isipu. I'm an environmental musician and planetary justice campaign.
Musician.
Yeah. So I want to talk.
You have to wrap your question.
Go ahead.
Please ask the question in 30 seconds.
All right. I have experience of grants. It's not what you are explaining on the board that is going to take place. It's practical. Grant is competitive. It's very difficult to defend. Let's not deceive ourselves by what to slide down. So I've been there before. I've collected the youth climate support grant. So our youth, we need to be more engaging in grants. Most people that collect this grant are NGOs that are granted. It's very difficult for individuals to access grant. People that access grant in Africa most are people from Kenya and Ghana. I've been in the pavilion of the climate forum in Sharm el-Sheikh. I asked them, they showed me the figure. Yeah,
30 seconds are over.
Yeah. So we have to go down to the root of this grant. Not by this lecture.
I hope that, thank you very much for that. I hope that there's some kind of stakeholder, some kind of engagement, like almost like you attended this course, you have everybody's email, because it would be great to learn from him in terms of what his experience has been. Yeah, something like that. So it should be
On the
set up.
learning platforms that to each other.
So, okay, so if you join the LMS, the learning platform, apparently everybody will be able to exchange information and you'll be able to message yourselves.
So, building on what the question she asked, I already asked a lot of it. So, can you give a success scenario that's been born? When you say born, I assume that there will be some sort of return on investment. For afforestation, for example, what form of return on investment comes from that kind of project? I'm very curious. Another thing is the readiness funds, for example, some of the readiness funding. I was working on one recently, and we struggled to really say, okay, we are trying to now make the project readiness looking for Nigeria already has a national academic contribution, as you know. So, I mean, how can is it we do the project that fits the criteria, or is it from up down or down or something like that?
You have to fit in ideally. You have to fit in your readiness aspects into your project design. For your first question, can you just reach out to me after? Because I don't want to say something that I can get you the response to that question, but just maybe I'll give you my email address, remind me, and then I'll get back to you with that. Because there are success stories. There have been a lot of challenges, but there have been some success stories. One more question, please. And then I'll hand over to you.
Thank you so much. Not a question, but just more of a
You
comment.
can do the gender thing. So let's have our leader. She was raising her hand before you. So it's not just it's like a first come, first serve thing. Last question, but not the least, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Emanuela Ofrebo. Nice presentation there. I'd just like you to focus a lot more on the reporting requirements you talked about and how it's seemingly something you need to project for. I think there's more to it than what I have in mind, if you don't mind.
Okay, so with no specifics, when you are giving every different set of funds and grants has its own reporting requirements. So let me give you an example. Let's say you want to do, let's just pick a really simple project. You want to do this solar cooking stoves. Your reporting requirements could be that you need to be very forensic about reporting on the greenhouse gas emissions that have been saved by you doing 1,000 cooking stoves. So sometimes reporting requirements entail you having some technical knowledge, you having access to people who you have to pay to get the information, because you just don't know how to calculate those types of things yourself. And so the reporting requirements will entail you actually having to spend more money, and it's a project cost in itself. Sometimes reporting requirements can be, there's a whole list of ESG criteria that you have to report on, and you have to get a consultant to help you, because you are just an entrepreneur, you don't have that information. So the feedback that the federal government have gotten with this new green bond is that they have to make separate funds available for meeting reporting requirements, which are quite complex. Now, what had happened in the first two green bonds is that, like I said, the companies who had received the funds had to go and access free grants to meet the reporting requirements, because sometimes they don't even have in-country capacity to actually meet the requirements, and they have to go and get foreign consultants. So sometimes it can be a little bit onerous. That is really Michaela says
Thank you so much. Please help me appreciate Madam for that. That's to say that thanks so much for giving the background and into plant making and the rest and some of the principle of climate finance. But I just want to chip in here like a comment, not a question, that and especially for the youth, that we should be very mindful of the fact that I think everybody will be interested in mitigation. The reality is that it's very complex. It's quite expensive. But what everybody keeps saying about resilient, climate adaptation resilient, people can live with climate change. And that is part of the solution that you can do within your own community. So with this knowledge of grant making and the rest, make effort. You can't just pray and don't act. Try to act. That's the first one. Madam, the second one is to you. Well, we've been in this field for a while now, but I know for a fact, that the issue of grant has reduced. Not only in Nigeria, globally, but even in developing and emerging, in some of the emerging countries. So, for the fact that you had the opportunity to work with all these multinational organizations, you need to please help us talk to them. I have been in the development world since 2001 and 2 to date. So I know what I'm saying. From donors, from development organization, I know, and even some of the project that comes to Nigeria, they will only focus on technical support, not on grants. So all what we are saying, if we don't have the opportunity for younger NGO, younger organization to, test on what you have just said there. At the end of the day, you just write all kind of things and look at it because it's very complex. The rule over there to get all this, to get that grant is quite restrictive. So
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that opportunity.
Thank you for that. What I will say as a closing remark, and I think maybe it's a good area to close, is that don't always think about grants that are flowing only from outside Nigeria or outside Africa. Think about local sources as well. Remember the slide where we said you can actually even have grants from corporate entities that flow as social responsibility grants. The idea is that once an organization, you're able to see that they have an objective and you can tie your project to meeting their objective, finance will flow. Once you have a project that so yeah, that's the end of that. Give yourself a round of applause. Thank you very More than one person has been carried.
We have actually, and I will have the clicker, if you can go to the last slide, the presentation will come from the last slide, and then we have, okay, good. So we have a very little time left, we are over time, and I wanted to build up on what previous lecture or training session focused on, and also the comment from Adebayo about the grants and various resources, not just financial, but information and knowledge resources that exist. A brief comment on the financing available through the World Bank and some other multilateral development banks. I think it's important to remember that multilateral development banks do not work with individuals or NGOs directly, they work with governments. So if you are seeking for finance or you want to be engaged with these donors, you need to either work with governments or work as a contractor for the government. Then we also can learn a lot and gain a lot of knowledge and information from the World Bank and other international organizations, because they publish various information and knowledge products. They publish reports, and they also make available various forecasting tools, analytical tools that you can use for free. You could do climate risk analysis using these resources, and if you had to pay for this type of analysis, it would be very expensive. But these resources are made publicly available for free online, and you could use them for your planning if you're working for private organization, individually, or if you're working for NGO. Additionally, this is, although this is not WRI resources, but there is an organization that is based, another NGO that is based in Washington, D.C., used to be called Foundation Center. They're not focusing on climate finance per se, but they are focusing on grant making and assisting NGOs and civic society and youth leaders to participating in various types of activities and projects that benefit society as a whole anywhere in the world. This organization has the biggest, to my knowledge, database in the US and possibly one of the biggest in the world of various grant makers and donors that provide grants for different causes, including climate and environment sustainability, but also gender and various topics. They have various levels of subscriptions and they do have free subscription at the basic level available. In addition, this organization offers free online trainings on grant proposal writing, on preparing budget for grant proposals, and that these trainings happen with some frequency. So the nearest one sequence will start tomorrow at 8 a.m. in the morning Nigeria time or 2 p.m. Eastern New York and Washington DC time. So the first training will be tomorrow on introduction to measuring your impact. Then there will be a session on introduction to project budget, fundraising planning, finding grants, also proposal writing, and introduction to foundation director. That's a database which has like list all of the grant makers who have been served by subject. And after this, I'm going to shift gears, and there's a website at the bottom of the page. You could take a photo of also that will be uploaded the presentation to you. You could access it for free online. You don't need to pay anything. And it's a very useful resource. I learned of it years ago when I was a PhD student and I was looking for funding options for research. So this is a great resource, really excellent one. Unfortunately, not well known outside of the US, so even EPC, not many people know about it. And now I will go back to the topic of climate change. And I will present the method and tool that WRI is currently working on. This analytical tool is using or based on the cost-benefit analysis or discounted cost-benefit analysis applied to climate change adaptation. Just to quickly summarize or what have been said today, when we are talking about climate change and how to address it, we are looking at the mitigation, and mitigation generally means reducing greenhouse gas emissions or creating carbon sinks. And creating carbon sinks, that's capturing carbon for several decades, 50 years or longer. And that could be done either through afforestation or through chemical carbon capture and storage, either underground or in the ocean. There are like new scientific methods available for that. And answering, I think this was a question from you earlier, how we can monetize the afforestation project. You asked the question. Okay. So one way to monetize the afforestation projects, theoretically, you could sell carbon credits to other countries, and that's the beauty of mitigation projects, because climate change mitigation is not limited to any geographic location. You could plant forests in Nigeria and sell carbon credits to Canada or Germany or theoretically, or a company that is based in anywhere in the world. Or even more simpler and direct way to monetize the afforestation or reforestation, you could reforest some area. It will look nice, and you could build some expensive houses there and build a resort. And it will be a much more expensive place than if you build houses on a near dump site. So that's a very clear and direct benefit and very fast one. So, and way to collect revenues from afforestation.
Okay, so this is just a short interjection. The certificates are ready for collection, but they are for people who do 3 modules. So we are going to have a short and brief version of the last module, and we would like to encourage everyone to just stay through the last module. The last module is climate change and health, and it's going to be an abridged version. So if you can do that module, then your certificate, you just pick your certificates as you go out. Unfortunately, if you don't do that module, then you will not be able to get your certificates. You'll probably have the option of doing it online to do all 5 courses. I just thought to mention. So we're going to speed things up quickly and have to.
Thanks so much. I'll try to speed up. Also, if you want to interrupt me with questions, please, you're welcome to do that. The benefits of mitigation projects is that it is, again, theoretically fairly easy to measure how much carbon emissions were or equivalents, the CO2 equivalent emissions have been avoided through energy efficiency or reforestation, because if we have, let's say, a hectare of forest, you know, the age and type of trees, we can calculate approximately how much of biomass is stored in that forest, live biomass, and then we will calculate how much of carbon is captured in that forest. The other types of projects or activities that are focusing on adaptation to climate change, the tricky part about them is that it is more difficult in a way to measure the benefits, because we are trying to measure some events that ideally will never happen, or if it does happen, it will not be as intense or as bad or as severe as it would have been otherwise if we did not make this investment. So basically, we are trying to measure how much damage we avoid by not having a flood. So it's a very, very hypothetical situation, and therefore it's like more difficult to make a case that this is the benefit and this is how much value in dollar amounts or other currency that we have from adaptation activities. However, still, different analytical tools can be used for measuring the benefits of investment in adaptation. And as previous presenter said, the adaptation is always location specific. It benefits specific people, whereas mitigation benefits everybody in the world, regardless of where it happens. Adaptation, if it's done in Nigeria, it benefits the community in Nigeria, it benefits specific people, it benefits businesses, it benefits organizations. We can, the tool that we are developing, the cost benefits analysis of adaptation tool, it uses the approach that is based on international environmental multilateral legislation and multilateral agreements, and uses principle of measuring benefits comprehensively, meaning benefits of avoided losses or avoided damages from the climate hazards, social and environmental benefits, and also positive spillover effects that creates additional economic benefits. When we are talking about climate change adaptation, we also, you have, I'm sure, used the term or heard the term interchangeably. We can speak about climate change adaptation, or we can talk about climate resilience. Those are not exactly synonyms, but they are very closely related terms. And when we are talking about climate, or before we start talking about climate change adaptation, we use the term of climate hazard. The one most important takeaway from this presentation, and also easy to remember, there are 3 elements of climate hazard. It's risk, of probability of bad event happening, negative event happening. The second factor is exposure. It's whether people material assets, buildings, or any infrastructure elements are located in the area that will be affected by this negative event. And then the third factor is vulnerability. And vulnerability is a kind of more complex concept. It means usually whether the infrastructure, businesses, organizations, so people, whether they have enough resources to withstand this negative event and to react to it and to recover from it. So if the resources are not there, or if the capacity is not there, it means that either community or people or organization are vulnerable. And then once we understand what is climate hazard and that there is a risk exposure and vulnerability, we can also start talking about the climate adaptation or adaptation to this hazard or resilience to this hazard. And some of the key elements to resilience is, first of all, it can be either material or physical resilience, anything that you build or any equipment that you buy, or it can be also some in the form of soft measures as a changes in processes in your organization or in your community, or some policy measures, maybe laws and regulations. And then, so when building resilience, you will be trying to reduce vulnerability, you will be trying to reduce exposure. You can also try to minimize the risk. For example, when you build the flood walls, you're minimizing the risk of floods. So the flood will still happen, but not in the town, not behind the flood wall. And then also, when designing resilience, we will be trying to, the aim will be to recover quickly from the hazard or disaster or emergency when it strikes, to have enough resources and plan ahead to respond to this emergency or disaster. And then if the damage happens, to reduce the cost of this damage. And this can be achieved in a variety of ways, for example, by preparing in advance also and maybe using higher standards in the equipment or in the buildings. If you know what level of risk and what intensity of hazard to anticipate. Then there is a caveat whether you are preparing for climate hazards as a private organization versus the public organization. The public sector has to take into account benefits for society overall, and it's not always guided, or frequently is not guided by economic profits. So it has to take care of all of the citizens and organizations and all of the entities that exist in the country. The private sector is driven by profit maximization objectives. So their objective is completely different. For them, they can do voluntarily the environmental and social responsibility, but it's totally volunteer. They don't have to do it. And therefore, they will not consider as many of different environmental and social benefits when they're doing the assessment of climate change adaptation measures. Another difference between the private and public sector is that when they're doing investment analysis or preparing the proposals for investment, because any project is an investment in a way, the discounting rate or interest rate that they used in the analysis, in the financial analysis, will be different. The government sector has access to various sources of low interest funding, and for green funds that were mentioned before, there can also be government issues, but there are also various government bonds. They traditionally have very low interest rates, and that affects the investment decision, because when we are doing the adaptation finance, when we are financing adaptation projects, the benefits of this climate adaptation and climate resilience, they happen later in the future. They can happen 20 years in the future, 30 years in the future. So we have to invest a lot of now, have expensive investment now, but the benefits will be much later. And then when we are finding the present value of this future benefits, we are discounting them to present time. they become much smaller, they kind of shrink. If we are using the high interest rate that's available for commercial loans, they shrink much more. If we are using the low interest rate that's available for government bonds or green bonds, they shrink less. So that makes the project investment projects justifiable economically if we are using low interest rates, but they may be not justified if the commercial interest rate are used. And the private companies, they often do not have access to this low interest rate types of financing options. So we are not talking about grants here, these are loans, but the loans can be very different depending on what interest rate is offered. And then also, so basically, when doing the climate change adaptation proposals or projects proposals, and looking into benefits for the community, environmental benefits, social benefits, this could help for the project to qualify for those low interest rate loans that will be backed by the government agencies or maybe local governments. And this is what we call the triple dividend approach, because by triple, we are talking about avoided losses and direct benefits from adaptation. Then there are economic benefits, and then there are environmental benefits. So all of these will be uploaded. There are more slides, about 6 more slides. They will be uploaded online, so you can access them later anytime. These are some of the international environmental agreements or multilateral environmental agreements that create the playing field and general framework globally for any climate finance projects included for climate change adaptation. Whenever you're writing the proposals for grants, or not grant, but even any type of loan proposals, it is good to make reference to the points that were mentioned in this agreement. Basically, link your proposals to the goals of these agreements and show that you are aware of them. And here is a summary of the steps. How do you approach how to prepare the climate change adaptation project? You need to understand what is the vulnerabilities of your organization as a private or public organization processes. Use life cycle approach and value chain approach. So don't just look at the operation of your organization. Look at who are your suppliers, who are your clients, maybe with whom do you do trade, what transportation channels you're using. Basically, study everything. Try to understand if there are any single points of failure in the operations of your business, like anything that can cause, like if it's affected by climate hazard, that can cause a complete disruption of your activities. And then look into the future. So try to assess future risks. Then also study if any climate hazards ever affected your organization in the past or other similar organizations in this location. So that will help you to understand the risk in the future when you study the past events. And then you will prepare the detailed list of all cost elements for investments to make resilient organization resilient to climate change risks and hazards. And then you will make a list of benefits, and the benefits would include direct benefits from avoided losses if you are prepared for that hazard, and also try to account for broader benefits. Maybe this will, if you are resilient to climate hazards, maybe this will create new business opportunities. Maybe you can charge more for your services. If you are building proper, like commercial or residential property or renting it, maybe you can charge more because it's resilient. And then I will skip through slides. So there are different types of economic and financial analysis that you could use for investment proposals. The typical ones are net present value, return on investment. Most commonly used are internal rate of return and external rate of return. But in this case, for adaptation finance, climate change adaptation finance and resilience, you could use a cost benefit analysis, and that's a tool that we are developing in WRI. It will be launched in 2025, like sometimes towards end of spring or early summer. It will be listed on our website. This is a process that's described. Again, you could review it later online. And these are some of the resources online, information and knowledge resources that you could use in your analysis. These resources are free. There are maps of climate risks by different geographic locations, and you could study flood risks in Nigeria, in different regions of Nigeria. There are also climate forecasts, including precipitation, not floods, but rainfalls, and heat waves and droughts at the World Bank website. Then there is also World Bank risk stress tool and some other maps. For example, NASA has publicly available free maps online. This is an example that you could again review it later. It's a very simplistic illustration of how fusion of broader environmental, social, and economic benefits could change your benefit to cost ratio when you're trying to decide whether to invest the project or trying to justify to the funder why do you want to invest or why do you need to invest in this specific climate change adaptation project. And then I also illustrate the effect of high versus low interest rate. So you could again practice online, practice yourself on do the math. But here you could see that if you use the low interest rate and take into account the broader sort of economic benefits, you get the benefit cost ratio that is about 1, which is what we want to have in a project. And then if you use the high interest rate, commercial interest rate, you will never get not even close to 1. Your benefit cost ratio will be 0.3. And that shows very clearly why you would be seeking the loans with a low interest rate, and also you want to include the broader socioeconomic benefits, because the climate change adaptation does create broader environmental, social, and economic benefits. So I will open the floor to questions. If you, Thank you.
Can we put our hands together for Irene? So when you come into this room and you see this board and you hear climate finance, you know it's not child's play. And of course, we heard a lot about what Dr. Maomi said earlier. So one more time, let's put our hands together for her. We're now literally beginning to land this plane with the very last module, and everyone here will happily leave and pick up their certificates for having done 3 modules. Just as we go into it, we're talking about climate change and health. And Dr. Maomi is going to try and condense this as best as she can. But again, we encourage you all to go online from the 26th of September to finish the 5 courses so you can get the certificate that covers for all 5. Without much ado, I will bring up Ms. Titi Akosa, someone I know very well, someone who is very, very passionate about the subject of climate change and health. She has worked for, I guess, over the past 2 terms with the current Commissioner of Health in Lagos State. When we talk about the phenomenal work that was done during COVID, this is the woman that was behind it. So let's put our hands together for her as she comes on.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Please permit me to stand on existing protocols. Today, I'm not going to talk very much, please, because I know everybody's tired.
and people want to go. So what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to read what I have written here, and just to give you just to encourage you, really. I know a lot of us have been thinking, how does health connect with climate change? It's something I'm sure you have been thinking, how does it happen? But then, if you remember that floods can, take people away, and you can taken away in the flood waters. That's the one health issue, isn't it? And if you remember that, if you're a farmer and you're trying to cultivate and your produce is growing and you are yet to harvest, and when the flood comes, it can flush them away. What does that mean? It means that there's going to be a gap in food security. And if you don't have good, nutritious food to eat, what does that mean? Hunger. And then that's a very big impact. And when we talk about wasting and stunting, it is really because we don't have much to eat. People go hungry, and that is when you have those kind of health situations. So I am truly honored to be here today to speak on a subject that profoundly affects us all, climate change and health. This issue is especially critical for you, the leaders of tomorrow, who are poised to inherit both the challenges and the opportunities. You believe that whatever challenges we are facing, some of you are going to inherit it because there is some unavoidable impact of climate change already as we speak, and the opportunities that come with it. So, firstly, let's explore the connection between climate change and health. Climate change is not just an environmental issue, but a multifaceted challenge impacting the very foundation of our health. Rising temperatures, extreme weather events, and shifting rainfall patterns are altering ecosystems and affecting the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat. These changes can lead to health problems, such as respiratory issues, waterborne diseases, and malnutrition. So these are simple, easy things that you can relate to it, that climate change can bring when it comes to health. So in Nigeria, the consequences of climate change are becoming increasingly evident, with a largely agrarian economy, unpredictable rainfall, and extreme weather events like floods and droughts directly affect agricultural productivity, leading not to food insecurity or malnutrition. Additionally, the increase in vector-borne diseases. You remember recently we have an outbreak of cholera here in Lagos, and Lagos was very, very severe. A lot of things have to be done. At least I was part of the team that was really addressing the cholera recently. And some of the things we saw, they are really terrible. They are not things I would be like to say here. And recently, I think yesterday, we were trying to get ready for Mpox. That's monkeypox. So it's not that we have an active case here already, but we know that if Cameroon has it, I think Cameroon has about 2 of the mutants already. Yet we don't have one getting there. And Cameroon is close to us. So we need to also be very careful, look at our borders and things like that. And you may be asking, Mpox is a zoonotic disease. And do you know how zoonotic disease happens? It happens when we do a lot of deforestation. And then when the forest moves into the city and moves into your house, and some of the diseases that is coming from animals that have been removed from this forest can jump on human beings. And that's why they call it zoonotic disease. This is a disease that jumps from the animal kingdom into the human kingdom. And you know that it could be very severe. We've had one before. I think we have Ebola, and we knew how it raged in Lagos here. And thank God we were able to address it. And I'm sure also COVID too is also a kind of a zoonotic disease, because we heard it came from an animal too. So if we're not careful, our action in terms of cutting our forest and turning it into houses and things like that, this is what happens. We need to be very careful. So urbanization adds another layer of complexity as cities expand, air quality often deteriorates, contributing to respiratory problems and urban heat islands that exacerbate the effects of heat waves. Yet, amid these challenges lies an incredible opportunity. You, the youth of Nigeria, are uniquely positioned to drive change. Your creativity, energy, and adaptability are critical assets in the fight against the climate change and its health impact. Advocacy and awareness. Use your voice to raise awareness about the importance of climate change and health. Engage with communities and policymakers to advocate for sustainable practices and policies that protect both the environment and public health. Leverage technology and innovation to develop solutions that address climate challenges, whether it's through renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, or improved healthcare delivery. Your ideas can lead to transformative change. Education and skills development. You need to equip yourself with the knowledge and skills required to thrive in a green economy. Pursue education in fields that contribute to sustainable development and resilience against climate impact. And be active in your communities. Promote and participate in initiatives that enhance resilience, such as tree planting, waste management, and local cleanup campaigns. Grassroots movements can have a significant impact. You know, acting local is very, very important. So we need to do a lot. As we look to the future, it is essential that we work together to build a sustainable, healthy world. I urge you to take the initiative, collaborate with your peers, engage with experts, and work with leaders to implement solutions that prioritize both climate and health. The journey will not be easy, but it is one we must embark on collectively. The actions we take today will determine the lives we lead tomorrow. You have the power to shape a healthier, more equitable world. Together, let us rise to the challenge, harness our potential, and inspire a movement that ensures a sustainable future for Nigeria and beyond. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So when a lawyer leaves her passion in law to face her learning from law to face her passion, this is what you get. So one more time, let's put our hands together. So as we wind down, I will have Dr. Maomi come and put the icing on the cake for us and take us through climate change and health, and we will call it a day. So, Doc, the floor is yours.
Okay, so just look at this as the stone you have to step over to get your certificate. So you can move on. Okay, I'm ready. So what I'm trying to do is we can't really go through all the slides. Let's try to look at what is best for us. You remember we talked about climate mitigation and adaptation. And the way I look at the impact and the interplay between climate change and health is that it's a very good adaptation opportunity. So try and think about that. Also try and think, as we're going through the presentation, try and think about ways that you can create opportunities to raise, like not just raise finance, but to create projects and create ideas and initiatives out of the problems and the gaps we're talking about. Okay, so I think that Madam, her speech has covered really that funny, complex relationship between climate change and health. It's one of those things that you think that the climate is changing, but you don't realize that that's what's affecting a lot of the health issues that we see, especially the public health issues. So yeah, this is all stuff we already know. We know what climate change is. We know why the climate is changing. We know that since the Industrial Revolution in 1750, 1790, that there's been an increase. We know what the greenhouse effect is. If you don't know, please come and ask me. Because one of the things about Africans, my God, people who know something, they just we're always covering up ignorance, especially when it's at a very fundamental level. So please, honestly, if you don't know what the greenhouse effect is and why our climate is changing, there's no point building blocks on a faulty foundation. Just come and ask me. I'll tell you in 2 seconds. Okay. We know what the common sources of greenhouse gas emissions are. And we want to be able to talk about how climate change affects public health. Public health is really just exactly that, just the science and practice of preventing disease across a wide ranges of communities. We know that, like Madam has said, climate change seems to be impacting health. So I'm going to show us some diagrams about why that's happening and what we think is going on. We can see that all these are human activities like deforestation, industrial processes, burning fossil fuels are all affecting our health. And this is a slide that just shows some of the really interesting impacts. So if you look at that white circle there where it says more extreme weather, climate change is causing all this. It's causing temperatures to rise, it's increasing greenhouse gas levels, it's causing our sea levels to rise. Like again, I said, if you don't know the reasons why these things are happening, please ask. Now, if you look at those boxes on the outside, let's start with the top left. Air pollution and increasing allergens. My son is 19 and he had childhood asthma. Apparently, the number of children in the past 20 years that have had childhood asthma is just the amount of pollens in the air. That is just linked to a lot of the human and climate-related activities that we have. Asthma used to be something that you only rarely ever had. Now, apparently 30–40% of children have some kind of childhood asthma, which they grow out of. You have things like extreme heat. So I don't know if you can see clearly. The extreme heat causes all kinds of heat-related heat-related health issues, up to cardiovascular failure, by the way, because it's just so hot. We've got droughts, which will affect water quality and will lead to things like waterborne diseases. We have environmental degradation. I was at a conference with the ECOWAS about 3 months ago, and like somebody said, a lot of the conflict that we're seeing now is actually very linked to climate change issues. Very interesting. We've got wildfires and smoke, which affect air quality. We have things like changes in vector ecology, very, very important. A lot of the parasites that cause disease, because it's much warmer, they're thriving much longer than the periods that they were thriving. And so are causing disease for much longer periods in human beings and in animals. So this is really a slide that shows, then of course, like Madam said, impact on food systems. We don't have the same. So this year we had an August break, if you noticed.
Yeah.
But we don't actually have the same systems that we need to grow food. They're not predictable anymore. So we're not able to grow our food. And so people are hungry. This is such a simple linear equation that we can see. Severe weather and floods. This is a link between climate change and occupational health and safety. That just leads to you see all those images where cars are trapped in floods. These things lead to all kinds of, you're not able to access medical care, access food, people are getting injured. So this diagram rather shows, it just tells the whole story. And so the question is really, what are we going to do about it? What are the opportunities for us? Because yes, climate change is a little bit of a long-term, it's not something that you can easily solve once, but that's why I said a lot of climate adaptation financing is beginning to be spoken about, where people are saying, let's not only think about mitigation projects, let's also think about how we can adapt our health systems, in this case, to climate, to what's happening in the climate. So what are the factors that make people more prone to health issues related to climate change? Things like how old they are, their age, their access to economic resources. That's the reason why they always say Africa is the most vulnerable. Because even when there are climate issues, we are least equipped to deal with it. We don't have the medical systems to deal with it. We don't have the resources. We don't have the medication. Geographical location, gender, women are always more vulnerable. Even race. There are studies that show that sometimes because of the race that you are, access to nutrition, all these things make you more likely if there is a flood. If there's a flood today somewhere in the US, they will bounce back much faster than we would. Which means we need to have emergency response systems that are able to cope with the issues that we face. Okay, so some examples. This is just India. India has a very similar socioeconomic profile to Nigeria, where because they had so many floods, they had an increase and a spike in diseases, and so they had to bolster and strengthen the emergency response system. This is the Horn of Africa, around like Ethiopia and Djibouti, countries like that, where a lot of the drought in those countries is very linked to their increase in health emergencies. Because imagine that something is wrong with your child and you are very, very far away from a hospital because there's been a flood. A small issue becomes a very big health emergency. This is another example. This is in Sierra Leone, Freetown, where they had landslides and it just led to unnecessary deaths. Just unnecessary, apart from the actual acute effects of the landslide, it just led to so many secondary issues that still led to people dying. So, and if you look at the outlook in Africa, it's quite negative. A lot of these graphs just show how a lot of the climate-related issues will cause even more health issues, a lot more secondary and tertiary issues. So how do we address these? There's an outlook that if you say that this is all sub-Saharan Africa, that things like schistosomiasis, cholera, malaria, meningitis, they are going to go up, and they're very linked to what's happening with the climate and our inability and unpreparedness for it. So here we just want to say that we are particularly at risk because we already have weak health and nutrition and health, weak systems. So when climate change happens, we're even less prepared to deal with it. So these are just some statistics that show that most of the countries in Africa are extremely high risk from climate-related issues. There's a lot of talk about climate adaptation financing that it should come into countries just to strengthen their systems. One problem we have, maybe you can, as the young generation, because I have given up, is how to ensure accountability. When funds flow in from that top level, so money comes to a high level government for adaptation finance to strengthen, let's say, your healthcare systems. How do we ensure accountability? How do we ensure that money flows from the government ministry or parastatal that is receiving the money down to that small medical center in a remote part of Nigeria that needs to receive the money? These are things you need to start thinking about how we can, or is it better for the money to come from the bottom up, or maybe from the side, and not to be coming from the top, because a lot of money is coming from the top, but it's not sort of trickling down. Okay, so we don't have to talk about this because this just shows that a lot of those policies I talked about, remember, the frameworks, many of them talk about public health and the need to strengthen health systems. And this is a graph that shows the fact that a lot of our Nigerian climate policy frameworks actually also include and refer to health. Now, this is where I want to sort of talk, and then we can close. How do we address our climate-related health issues? It's really about strengthening our health networks. We need to have climate-resilient health systems, even things like making sure that even if a flood comes, the clinics are actually flood-resistant and they're climate-resilient. Very, very important. So things like addressing vector-borne diseases, expanding our disease control programs. Nigeria used to have, in the 80s, excellent disease control. I think Lagos State, madam, needs to teach the rest of the country what to do about public health. Yes. Because it used to be a very international thing where we would eradicate a lot of with vaccination programs. So we really need to do, we actually need to teach the rest of Africa about how to manage public health in the country. Nigeria was there's so many diseases that were endemic that we eradicated in the 80s on a national scale. There's so much learning that can happen. Air quality improvement. We need to implement regulations that improve air quality. Remember how air quality was during COVID? Where everywhere was just, clean. We need to have a healthier population. So for instance, I just even a simple thing like moringa. Have you ever heard about moringa? Yes. We have it, and apparently moringa is one of the most nutritious substances on the planet. When can we not get everybody in Nigeria to have these packs of moringa that are quite cheap? Even if all you can afford to give your child is rice with no stew and meat, and you sprinkle moringa on it, apparently you fed your child for the day. Why don't we have this type of things at a national level, like national programs? And moringa is very cheap. So we need to actually build in a way to make people stronger and to improve health that is nationwide. So let's just talk about some of the challenges that face the public sector in Nigeria. Scarce human resources, we talked about that. You know, there's this big, I think the health sector is pretty much the sector that's affected the most by the Japa syndrome. Yes. Because we train doctors, we basically train doctors to go abroad. So, and it's not just doctors, it is paramedics, it is nurses, we don't have medical, yes. So all our medical schools are training them to go abroad. We don't have the adequate health facilities. My daughter is 20, my son is 19. I vaccinated them in a local, because I'm a cheapskate. I vaccinated them in a local clinic. You know, like it was a local government. So 20 years ago, we actually had vaccinations. You go proper vaccination. All their vaccination certificates are from a local government. I don't know if that exists today. You don't.
You don't, yes. Yes.
Yeah. Fantastic. Fantastic. That's why I said Lagos should maybe teach other people. So we need these health facilities everywhere. I'm going to interrogate that, but for the sake of moving on. Okay. So health financing. So even when there are health facilities, economically, people don't have the money to afford it. Have you noticed what happens in Nigeria now? I don't know if it happens in other states in Lagos. When people are sick, they don't go to a doctor. Yes. What do they do? They go to the pharmacy. And then the pharmacist will now be telling them what to take and diagnosing them. Our whole medical system has changed. Now, we don't have the medical products either. And then, of course, this whole issue of education and awareness. Yeah. So, you know, when we were in debating society, we used to say, I don't know if they still have debating society, I hope I have succeeded in convincing you and not confusing you. So let's just take questions. Thank you very, very much.
Bring the mic.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Emmanuel Oladipo. I don't have questions per se, but first of all, I will commend the organizer of this program. So, and based on what the last I want to say that this type of program is not complete without inviting some set of people here. Because the type of people I'm seeing here, they are on suits, they are wearing this, they are speaking thick English. But the people that are destroying the environment, they are not here. I will advise, like all this agro, when you are coming to show you see somebody defecating on the road, when you see these women, market women, and even the school association like NAPS, like Nigerian Unions of Teachers, all those things, they need to be invited in. Then secondly, This program, you have spent millions of naira on it. What mechanism are you putting on the ground? Like maybe volunteers, write our names down so that we can go and preach this message to the people in our community. Thank you, sir.
Can we put our hand together for me? Even though your name, sir. Your name, what do you do?
A teacher and also a consultant. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. So I really, really love those questions, you know, and I will try to answer them. So the objective, if we look at that logo on the corner, youth environment and climate leadership training. So the fundamental objective was to get youth in one room and try to have these conversations with them while we pass on knowledge, because the first thing we did was to say, youth in Nigeria, what do you want? What are your areas of interest? Now, the people you have described, because I actually wear two hats. I'm also a marketing expert. And from the marketing perspective, when you're engaging people or communicating with people, you communicate with them in a language that they understand. So that is why even on this training, you can see Dr. Maumi and you can see Dr. Etwa is, okay, he just came around, I think he just finished. They are delivering the content based on their wealth of experience and their knowledge in the space. However, there is a plan, which is why we've been talking about online that is going to be launched on the 26th of September. That online training actually takes into consideration Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba translation of the same thing. So people will get this same material in those languages. That is what we have done to ensure that this content goes as far and as wide as possible. So the Agberos, they will, if they come in contact with this content, they will be able to engage with it in a language that they understand. Yeah, so that is how we've been able to attach that. Then the second question on, we spent millions and there was something about, sorry? Yeah, the mechanism for continuity. Yeah? Was that the question? Yes. Okay, so the community is the online platform. And that is because there are two more modules that you guys in this room need to do. You know that 2 modules happened there that you guys were not part of. Yes. You know, we showed you 5 different modules. Yes, sir. So for you to have gone through this completely, you still need to do those 2 modules. The only way that you can do those 2 modules is online. And when you do those 2 modules online, you will then get the certificate to say you have done all 5 modules. Yeah? Now, for 3 months, these courses are going to be online. The course doesn't take 3 months to learn, to go through, because it's self-paced. Some people might decide that they want to do this course for a week and they face it for 1 week and they do it and it's done. Some people might decide, oh, my schedule is tight, I'll be able to only do it over 2 weeks. Some people might say, I might be able to do it over 1 month. But Courtesy WRI, they've been gracious enough to say they will keep the course online for 3 months for access to all. After that, it will sit on Green Hub Africa's website. Again, access is there. But the point I'm trying to make is that when you take all of this learning, the quizzes, and unfortunately there were some practical hands-on engagements in the courses that we were unable to do because of time. But the bottom line is, first of all, you've connected, you made a new friend, you've come into this new community, that community is an LMS that allows you to continue to have exchanges and engagements. And if there's one thing that you take away, whether it's from the panel discussions or from the exchanges that people had, or even from the delivery from the experts, it was collaboration, partnerships, staying in touch with people, knowing that somebody might have a solution to what you need. So all of that is what we're saying. There's a community and an army, really, of new, young environment and climate leaders that are being raised through this platform. You're the one who is standing for. So maybe I think I've answered this question. But in summary, to be honest, we only I say to people, and this is personal to me, I'm fighting with myself to be better than I was yesterday. I'm not competing myself with anyone else. You can want to be anything, that's you. But as long as I'm doing better than I was doing, based on where I was yesterday, I'm making progress. And that's what we should all do, especially in this fight to save the planet. So I think that there's a call to action, if you notice, for all the courses. Each expert had call to action. You guys, it's not just a talk shop, there's something you must do. If we take this thing as seriously as we should, we will find out that unconsciously, even if you're not talking to people, just from living your life, people will be asking you questions about, okay, why this, why that? And remember, this impact is a numbers game. The more people we get into our fold, the better. I think I will stop there for now. And I'd like to really, really thank everyone. I don't know if you have any last comments, Michaela. She has a question, okay.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Titilayo. Yes, I'm Titilayo, and it's been very fun and insightful session. So in March, I have this organization, and we did a cleanup in Bariga, along with climate sensitization and advocacy. And in between the advocacy that we're interacting with market women and people in the community, we saw that there was a lot of health, changes, and we were unable to address it because we went there primarily for climate education and, to integrate them into how they can take climate action in their space. So if we are to have that kind of project, for the next edition, how can we help address the health gap that we've identified? Because these people live in rural communities, and sometimes when this flood happens along Bariga or Dusi Road, you see that their water is polluted. Some of them have health diseases. So what can we do as an organization, next time we're on that project? Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's always a very important issue that happens during flooding. When there's no flooding, there are other health issues to address. First of all, if it's a disease, you need to present to your health facility. That's very important because you are not a medical doctor, so you may not be able to diagnose it. So the person needs to present to the health facility. And it will be better for that person if the person has what we call the Lagos State Health Insurance, Ilera-Eco. So he can go there if he has paid his premium. So he gets all the services free, at least in the first instance. So far it is not a complicated disease. So they will get to diagnose, tell you what is happening to you. And when it comes to water issue, I think what other issue did you mention again? Yeah, you see, when it comes to pollution, water pollution is very, very rampant in Lagos. Whether we like, even if there's no flooding, the water we also drink in our houses. Let me tell you, in most cases, they're all polluted. And not because they are not treated, but we have rusty pipes all over the place. So those kinds of water that comes into your houses, we can never guarantee. I know a lot of people take pure water, isn't it? And even pure water like that, you cannot guarantee. But the simple thing you can do is to boil your water. It helps a lot. Rather than, even if you have to boil your pure water, it makes sense. So I'm telling you, nobody actually will really want to drink water from the tap anyway. Not really because it's not clean. But the truth is that all our pipes, by the time you lay pipes and the water starts flowing,
if it has been there for years, there's nothing you can do about it. It will be rusty, and it will put in some things that you don't need into the water. So the simple solution that you can do, which is cost effective, is bottle your water before you drink them. Those are issues. And if people are living in flooded houses, I pray that they have enough money to move away. But also, I know that they always sound flooding alerts. And I keep telling them that you can't be sounding flood alerts without telling people where to move to. You must prepare. Because yes, in Lagos State, we have some makeshift places, I think in Nepe also, and if some other 3 locations in Lagos, but that can hardly take everybody. So once you know that at a particular time, your house is going to be flooded, it's also advisable that maybe you might book that area for some time before you come back. And the best way is also to relocate from that place. Thank you.
Thank you for that intervention. We'll conclude now, but I'll just end with some closing remarks and also a bit of a response to the question asked earlier about what's next and things like that. I think something really important to remember is that this is a leadership training, and we all wanted you to be here because we see you as climate leaders in your communities and in your schools and everything else. And so something to move forward is, as you join us online and take the course, is to spread the word within your communities and your schools and your churches and other things. Let them know that this training will be online and it's available and it's free for all to access, and they can be a part of the community too, and it can continue to spread and spread. And so thank you so much for spending your time with us today. Energy. We look forward to seeing you next week. If your certificates are out there together. Yeah, so yes, it's fine.
One last thing, please. We would like a very nice picture of all of us. We haven't taken pictures. We need to take a very, very nice shot. So just before we go, can we please, all of us there? Yeah. Let's have layers, please. Yes, so the first set sitting, the second set standing, the third set standing up here. Maybe in front. In front there. Yeah, but yeah, so just bring, if you want to sit, just bring a chair, put it here across. Yeah, the next set standing, the third set here. Michaela.
Yeah. Sorry.